So I'm going to ask the other speakers to all come and join me. Let's save this seat for the minister when he arrives. So if you join from here to the end, Tonko Obuljen, President of the Croatian Regulatory Authority. Welcome. Please have a seat, sir. David Bourne from the Roland Berger Institute. Please welcome. Have a seat. Let me ask the Minister, Damir Habijan, Minister for Justice, Public Administration and Digital Transformation, Government of Croatia, to join me. Welcome, sir. And have a seat. This is going to be in dialogue with business. So we have Andrea Antoniou, Vice President and Head of Central and Southern Europe at Iron Mountain. Please welcome and have a seat. Where she is. Ivana Mrkonjić, President of the Board, Croatian Post. Congratulations on your appointment. Boran Lončarić, Chairman and Chief Executive of GDI, Adrian Ježina, Chief Executive of Telemach, and Ratko Mutavčić, WW Public Sector Industry Advisory Director at Microsoft EMEA. Okay, so yeah, it's a big panel, and I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic discussion on this topic. Just urge everybody in the interest of time and discussion to stick to the time. There's a clock here in front. If you can be less than your 5 minutes, that's great, and it'll give us more time for discussion. So I'm handing straight over to the Minister to kick off our discussions.
Dobar dan svima. So without the questions.
Yeah, if you want to make some opening remarks.
Opening remarks, so okay, great. Dobar dan svima, isprika na malom kašnjenju, ali nije do mene, odnosno moram reći da nije do mene, možda je malo do mene. Pa evo prije svega zahvaljujem da sam ovdje, zahvaljujem na pozivu.
1 second, do people require headsets for the translation? Yes. Some people do, so maybe we can have a few headsets.
We can wait, okay, no problem. Dakle, još jednom zahvaljujem na pozivu, isprika na malom kašnjenju i čestitam organizatorima i na prilici zapravo da i danas na ovom panelu, ali tijekom cijelog dana, ali poglavito danas tijekom ovog panela imamo zapravo, odnosno imam priliku ispred Ministarstva pravosuđa, uprave i digitalne transformacije nekoliko riječi koje su bitne o onome što činimo, pogotovo u dijelu koji se odnosi na digitalizaciju, odnosno na digitalnu transformaciju unutar Ministarstva pravosuđa, što smatram da je izuzetno bitno, pogotovo u segmentu ne samo digitalizacije preko javne uprave ili pravosuđa, već generalno cjelokupnog društva. Doista mislim da po tom pitanju radimo zajedno sa cijelim timom unutar ministarstva, ali ja bih rekao i komunikaciji sa privatnim sektorom odlične stvari i siguran sam da će danas zapravo biti prilike da o mnogima od tih projekata i mnogo više kažem.
Yeah, a short introduction, or
of course.
Yeah, well,
excellent. That's great because we're going to come back and talk in conversation about some of the challenges and some of the successes there. So, yes, over to Tonko Obuljen.
Yeah, well, very short. I think for us as a regulator, this is really timely discussion as we stand in front of Digital Networks Act. Which is a little bit delayed. It's expected in January, and it's expected it will bring a lot of changes into the sector. So I really want to hear the industry speaking here about it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we'll come back then to get your responses once you've heard from them. So over to you, David Bourne, Roland Berger Institute. You've got a few slides which we can load for you, and you can explain what's on them.
Great. Okay, we've heard a lot today about Europe being in a troubled situation, which is definitely true. But I here want to bring a bit a more hopeful message. Because Europe has been and still is a promise of growth and freedom. And Europe has been and still is delivering on that promise. If we look at all the member states that joined over the past quarter century and see what they have achieved, I name Poland as an example, but Croatia is an excellent example as well. We see that the promise of growth and freedom is still alive. But we should also turn our view around a bit, because Europe as a continent has become very focused on the status quo. And my argument here is that especially those countries that I have just mentioned, the members that joined in the past quarter century, they offer dynamic development where Europe as a whole is too slow. So Europe benefits a lot from these new members that are not that new anymore, because they are growing much more strongly, and they are growing also because of putting technology to good use. So let me briefly run you through why especially Europe is challenged by that lack of technology, how Croatia comes in, and how Croatia might even more leverage that. So first of all, I wonder that Professor Bofinger didn't show that slide, because it clearly demonstrates how dire the situation in Europe is. We simply lack growth. And that is a phenomenon which has been going on for many, many years already. And now we are starting to feel it. One of the reasons for that is this chart. Our productivity is simply not growing anymore. A little bit, it is growing a little bit, but as compared especially to the US, growth is really slow in productivity. Why is that? This is because we are not putting digital technologies to proper use. We are relying on companies that have been founded 100 years ago, and they are too slow in adopting these digital technologies, at least when compared to the big players in the US. Now, what does that have to do with Croatia? I have already mentioned it. Croatia has been growing much faster than the Eurozone overall. We are talking here of doubling GDP per capita on a real basis, of course. And what is even more important, Croatia has also grown its productivity much faster than the rest of the Eurozone. This means the growth we have been witnessing in Croatia over the past years was not only driven by tourism, but it has also been driven by technological advancement. And this is not just a very macroeconomic diagnosis, but it's also there on the ground. If you look at ICT specialists, for example, this is above average in Croatia. Or if you look how companies here, small and medium-sized companies, how they put digital technology to their best use as compared to other states in the European Union, it's much better here. And this is what's driving this 46%. So this is a really impressive trajectory, and the rest of Europe should actually be learning much more from these countries than the other way around. Of course, Croatia might or should leverage these opportunities in the future. A lot of things we have just heard are already ongoing. Of course, digital education, modern public services, a modern services industry helps a lot to further drive productivity gains. The same goes for connections and cooperation in science and tech. Building innovation becomes more and more complex, and for that, as Enrico Letta has said, every country in Europe is a small country, so we have to cooperate, not just within Europe, but also outside of Europe. And finally, administrative reforms. Deregulation is a big, big deal for Europe as a whole, but of course also for countries like Croatia, making things as easy as possible for companies so that they invest here and drive productivity. So overall, a message of hope. Europe will continue to fulfill the promise of growth and freedom, but we should stop focusing just on the old part of Europe and much more turn to the excellent growth stories we see in the central and eastern parts of the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, turning now to our business representatives on the panel. Andrea, up from Iron Mountain, over to you.
Hi, I come from a company which is the biggest global player in the world when it comes to information management. And we work closely with organizations in transitioning from what was the physical era into the digital world. So we know firsthand what are the opportunities and what are the challenges in the private and in the public sector. Because I'm leading Southern and Central Europe, I've seen that sometimes being a little bit behind might give you the opportunity to leapfrog and implement much newer technologies that other countries, bigger countries, might have a little bit more complexity in doing so. When it comes to digitization, Europe has invested heavily the past years in digital infrastructure. The question is, how do we turn that infrastructure into something useful that will create a real economic impact? So how do we move from digital availability to digital productivity? Croatia is a very good example because now 2/3 of the population have access to very high capacity networks. In terms of digital skills, it's very close to the EU average, and I think in younger generations it's even a little bit higher. And we have the e-citizen platform, which is an amazing opportunity for the citizens to go online and do a lot of things. The challenge now is that this availability doesn't translate into transformation automatically. What we need is shifting in what we call institutional infrastructure, digital identity, interoperability, the once-only principle, getting AI-ready systems. So all these are very important to turn this into an opportunity. We all have the same experience in Europe. We go to the taxation office, we go to health and social benefits, business registration, and we resubmit information that already exists. And this is about this connectivity and this interoperability between the systems. And again, this is exactly where I see Croatia having an advantage. It doesn't lead to go the traditional route from infrastructure to services. It can go directly to AI solutions, and I think the speed of execution is of essence here.
Excellent, thanks very much, Andrea. Over to Ivana now Mrkonjić from Croatian Post.
Yes, and I'll deliberately be traditional and maybe heretical in the context of digitalization because my company, our company, is the perfect example where physical delivery and infrastructure, no matter how much digitalized our processes are extremely important. Because you will be receiving, many of you, many parcels during these holidays, and there should be a person in a car that will deliver it to you. So I do understand that digitalization is extremely important because it can improve processes, it can speed them up, but from the point of view of a post, there should always be a person and a car and a post office. And particularly because we are still a very traditional country, and in the rural regions, there are three major, most important people in the village: a doctor, a priest, and a postman. So I think this is a very important value of this institution, and we are the institution that that symbolize the somehow this I don't know how to say it, traditional versus modern together. And at the end, just as a joke, maybe you remember the movie The Postman with Kevin Costner. Dystopic story about a war, and all the communication means are non-existent, and there is a little yellow trumpet that actually brings news to people and let them survive the war. So this is the way I see the Post.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Turn now to Boran Lončarić from GDI.
Well, thank you very much for recognizing, thanks to our colleagues from Roland Berger, for recognizing that there has been a quiet storm in our countries, in our region, where actually we have something to contribute to the rest of the world. If we look at the quality of our infrastructure, I didn't want to mention that, but for instance, Croatian Post took over the market share from other package delivery companies. In the communication infrastructure, we actually are doing, well, we are not the best in the world, but Croatia is, depending on the year, ranked 8th or 14th, 8th in Europe, or 14th in the world in speed of broadband access. So some years it's actually just behind Switzerland and in front of US. So we do have something to contribute to the world in the methodology, how we actually manage this transition from old copper networks via hybrid fiber coax to the broadband of various kinds, the speeds which are generally over mobile currently approaching almost 100 megabits per second on the average, and how we are able to actually have more than 100 megabits per second with more than 50% of the fixed connections. I want to say that's not the case in London. That is not the case in Frankfurt. And the quality of our services has been really tremendously confirmed time and time again, such as in the case of COVID, when the complete educational curriculum was delivered to all kids in the country over communication networks and broadcasting networks in a flawless manner, which Austria could not achieve. So we have something to contribute to the world in the methodology and in the underlying platforms which enable these industries, infrastructure providers, to be successful. That is not easy, and we are capable of contributing in the context of challenging demographics. We have to be aware that number of citizens has not increased, it has actually decreased. So the number of potential customers is smaller. How do you achieve revenue, how do the operators achieve a revenue stability, or let's say minimal decline, while continuing to be profitable and to continuously increase the quality of networks and contribute with capital? Well, they had to be more and more productive. There was no other way. And so therefore, building digital tools for themselves and for the regulators, where all of the networks are actually represented through various levels of digitalization of the networks themselves, becoming digital twins, and most of the processes are orchestrated such as that the telecom operator functions in a manner like a good orchestra. Not every performance is perfect, but overall our orchestras perform really, really well. So I'll combine that with another question. Do you know where the fastest electric cars are designed, manufactured? Just west of Zagreb. Do you know who manages Bugatti as the brand name? It's managed out of Zagreb. Do you know who supplies the fastest growing number of transformers for the smart grid transformation in Europe? It's the company from Zagreb. Was it big news that yesterday Zagreb-based IT company acquired a company in UK for 12 million euros? It didn't even make it big news. It has become normal. Living digitally, being part of the global technology industry is the fact today. That quiet storm, that quiet tide that happened is really de facto standard today. And we do contribute. We ourselves are happy. For instance, fiber networks in the newest Saudi city, the NEOM, are planned, designed, and construction is managed with software out of Zagreb, Croatia. Qatar Energy Networks are managing their communication networks with software from Croatia. So there is this complete storm where many, many players, including ourselves, are actually operating globally. And that's the reality we have to recognize. On top of that, today I must say I don't know anybody who doesn't interact with the government strictly digitally. There is not a single organization I know that interacts with government on paper. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Over now to Adrian Ježina from Telemach.
Hi, everybody. Don't be modest, Boran. The software in Saudi and Qatar is his software from his company, but so it's one thing to cherish. Good Croatian companies. I'm coming from the telecom industry. I want to also maybe follow on how good Croatia is in infrastructure. Actually, it was not so good 5-6 years ago. So 5 years ago or 6, we were the last in fixed broadband connectivity on this index in Europe. What changed in the meantime, and good that you brought that up, it's actually United Group came to Croatia and bought a couple of stable, slowing down companies, integrating and made a big investment. We invested a lot, we built fixed and mobile networks, but because we were doing that, the competition actually reacted. It was kind of duopoly before that. We were last on the EU DES index. We had high prices, low speeds, and competition we brought in, actually with building our networks, also forced the competition to build their networks. And as a result, today, as you mentioned, we are in the middle of EU already in fixed broadband and in upper third on quality of mobile networks. And you know, why is that important? Today's world, digital is everything. It's kind of bringing connectivity to somebody is like 50 years ago, bringing, or 100 years ago, electricity and water. You cannot be sustainable, do business or live if you are not connected to the world. And you know, telecommunication and ICT in general, if you look also the big tech companies from States, are kind of industry which is horizontal industry among all the verticals. So you cannot really move forward as an individual, as a company, as a society if you are not embracing a digital world. And you know, we are very happy that actually our company is also helping that in Croatia in a way that we try to bring this high-end technology on affordable prices to everybody. So it's kind of getting digital you know, equilibrium for everybody and inclusivity. And that was kind of missing before. However, of course, even though now we have a kind of good coverage and good speeds, Croatia is not covered. So there is still third of Croatia that needs to be covered. There is some rural areas in mobile also, and more rural you go, more expensive and less commercial it becomes. And there are some good, let's say, patterns that you know, government sees how important this is for society and for demographics of these rural areas and everything else. And there are some nice EU and government-funded projects to bring actually first connectivity, and by that also bring these parts in digital area. There's still probably 4 or 5 years to go to close Croatia on that level. And here we have also a lot of, I would say, bureaucratic obstacles, getting permits, digging, you know, which vendors are allowed, which not, why. The ecosystem was kind of historically made for urban areas, for rural. There is still a long way to go, but you know, there are partners and there is a will and know-how, and I believe Croatia is now with this moving speed in digitalization. It's in a good way to really solve that as an infrastructure in the next, let's say, business time period, and be enabler for all the nice companies and people and government to move on. And you know, connection of digital and human also happens first time now directly with AI. And the world was changing fast until now, and it probably will change much faster in the future. and there will be a lot of unknowns, not just geopolitical, but here. And I think, you know, Croatia is a small country, and Europe is a small country with all what's happening, and Europe doesn't have cheap energy, doesn't have chipsets, doesn't have large language models, so kind of lost already their battle with AI. So how to continue and actually be able to move, increase productivity with AI and move on with the new technology, that's I think one of the biggest questions for Croatia and for Europe in the future.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but just maybe you could say something about what you'd be hoping to see in terms of forthcoming digital network regulation or legislation. Is there anything that's on your mind?
Well, you know, we are actually what I think Europe generally has. We are regulating now, or based on the past experiences. I think that's the biggest problem in Europe. We need 2-3 years to make a regulation. 3 years ago, AI as we know it today didn't exist. So I think we are not looking in the future a lot. We are looking always backwards in the present, and we are kind of missing the trains. I think too regulated industry, too diverse, you know, 130 telecom operators in Europe, 3 in America, 3 in China. And look at the 1990s. Europe had Samsung, Nokia phones. You were a front runner in telecommunication in the world. 20 years later, there is realistically no European company. 2 of them are trying in one segment of technology, but we lost no OTTs, no big players. So the way we are doing it as a European, of course, Croatia is part of Europe, won't change anything, and we can just get a bigger gap. So I think it's not one thing to change. I think a lot of things should change on that perspective.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So over to you now, Ratko Mutavdic.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just build on what actually Adrian started. I'm representing like a global company, hyperscaler, platform provider. A lot of great partners also sitting in customers here. But also, I would like to remind you on something which Mr. Leta said. He was talking about how we are creating this fifth freedom, right? He was talking about knowledge-based economies, knowledge capital, which Europe wants to liberate. And it kind of also leads me into what we are doing when you're thinking about how do we implement these new technologies and what do we do with them, right? And so I do believe that there will be a fifth industrial revolution coming in full speed that would be based on AI and anything that we are together building on this one. And there is a big question on how Europe is going to play in that area. Now, there are a lot of people who would say, well, we are a little bit late, Europe, US is doing this, Asia is doing that. But I would also, I would like to say that some of the competition that European Union countries see are not really coming from that space, right? I mean, there are like a new countries, smaller countries which are investing way much more and growing more. Middle East, for example, right? And they are trying not just to catch up, they want to lead, right? So there was a slide where there was a presentation on how much Germany is investing in AI, and I think it was like 400 or 4 billion. And you know, funny enough, I cannot remember, but it's irrelevant because 4 billion is not enough, right? When you compare that to Saudi, which is investing 400 billion to actually create a brand new economy, brand new industry, and everything around this one. So no wonder our companies are selling in Qatar and all these countries over there, right? So I think very important for the future economies or digital economy in this term is going to be like, how do we find individually as countries ourselves in this global market, and where do we compete and what we are fighting for? And when you think about the investments, I think 50% of the VC investments today are going into the AI. So it's a massive investment. Someone could say maybe it's a bubble, but what if it isn't, right? What if we are creating this fifth industry revolution with this one? and then how all these countries are going to play in that space. And when you think about the investments that the countries are looking for, I know that for a fact, AI-enabled data center is anywhere between $1.5 to $15 billion investment, right? So it just generates a lot of questions, a lot of opportunities, a lot of things which needs to be solved. But I think it's going to, if we take this positively, locally, regionally, but also globally, I think globally through the partnerships is very important. It could enable us a different type of growth. And everybody's talking about this one, right? So if we cannot grow in the way how we used to grow, obviously we need to look at something new. And I think that anything related to the technology is now on a completely different level of and speed of execution, investments, and outputs at the end. So it will take probably way much more longer time than we used to have today. But every single country individually needs to create, I think, a good plan on how they want to position themselves in European Union new economy, but also how they are going to ignore that in a way and play on the global level in the first place, right? That's the necessity of speed of execution which is happening around ourselves. And unfortunately for us, for Europeans, we are not well known as, fast execution guys, right? That was mentioned on Roland Berger's slide also, I think, like where the growth happening and where this is innovation and so forth. And money is not an issue. I think that was also on one of the discussion, right? Everybody's saying like, well, we can find money. Money can be printed at the end, right? Debt thing. But the question is how we are going to spend it and what is going to be the output at the end, right? And that's a long-term question for the European Union, I think, not just related to the digital in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that was British understatement about Europe not moving fast. But, Boran, did you want to say something very briefly in response?
Yes. I wanted to comment that, as Ratko knows, necessity is the mother of all invention. So when you really need to be agile, such as Ukraine has to be agile, then you apply AI immediately on the spot. I can share that, for instance, my first job in 1987, August 1st, stated that I'm responsible for marketing and applying expert systems. Today, expert systems is the origin of AI, enabling you to infer about a certain problem or type. It was about machine maintenance or medical decision-making, etc., including image processing. And today, everybody thinks about big image processing as the realm of AI. Not true. 1990, I did a project in Slovenia for their statistical office to determine what was the trend in their land use, land cover, forest versus agriculture, etc., etc. We cannot share the details, but in the Homeland War, what would be called AI today was heavily used, starting from 1991 up till 1995. So I think that there is a way that the nations and organizations can become agile if there is a proper impetus, but we have to be careful that we have to deliver real value, not just talk about cool technology. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, your products and services will have value if they deliver real contribution to the end user organization. AI is still, what is touted as AI today, still has to prove itself to deliver really in more than 20% of the cases.
Yep.
So the revolution may come. Let's be very focused on what we need to deliver with it.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to come back now to the Minister and to Hakom as well. Minister first. So we do want to talk a little bit about public administration and digitalisation, because that has also been quite transformative in many countries. So it's important to know what the government here is doing. And so I just wanted to hear a bit more about the digital reform strategy here. And is Croatia modelling that strategy on that of any other nation that has done this successfully? Obviously, UK did this quite well. Greece, more recently, did that very well. Or have you just developed your own strategy without? reference to others?
Što se tiče Hrvatske i digitalne transformacije, ja bih rekao da je zapravo svaka zemlja, bez obzira što smo dio Europske unije, specifična, pa onda sukladno tim specifičnostima zapravo mislim da moramo naći svoj vlastiti put i svoj neki vlastiti normativni okvir. I ja mislim da, a i temeljući na ovome što smo do sad mogli čuti tijekom panela, ja bih rekao većina govornika zapravo prepoznala korake koje po pitanju digitalizacije ne samo javne uprave već i pravosuđe ili u cjelini kada govorimo o digitalizaciji cjelokupnog društva doista velike iskorake napravila. Nedavno je bila jedna strana delegacija u posjetu ministarstvu koja je zapravo kada je vidjela, pogotovo kada govorimo o digitalizaciji javne uprave gdje je Hrvatska danas, je doista pozitivno ostala iznenađena. Mislim da je neki način i to dokaz da idemo u dobrom smjeru. Ja mislim da svi više manje u Republici Hrvatskoj, prije svega mislim na građanke i građane, dakle već su upoznati sa određenim, ja bih rekao, alatima, jer digitalizacija bi trebala biti alat koji je zapravo i ide u korist građankama i građanima, ali isto tako i gospodarstvu, poput e-građanina, dakle gdje imamo već u ovom trenutku oko 2,2 milijuna korisnika, ili e-građanina, dakle mobilne platforme ili sustava koji smo nedavno i prezentirali javnosti gdje imamo oko 88 tisuća korisnika, ili nešto što smo nazvali životne situacije koje bi zapravo na jednom mjestu trebale puno lakše našim građanima, ali isto tako i gospodarstvenicima odgovoriti uz pomoć isto tako koristeći sustav umjetne inteligencije na određena pitanja, dakle po koracima, dakle prilikom kupnje automobila ili nekretnine ili neke druge životne situacije olakšati im zapravo snalaženje u onim birokratskim problemima ili izazovima s kojima se najčešće kada govorimo o javnoj upravi ljudi snalaze. U konačnici neki cilj je zapravo do 2030. godine da cjelokupnu javnu upravu i cjelokupne procese digitaliziramo. To je sigurno izazovno je prije svega, kao što znate po prvi put zapravo u Vladi imamo ministarstvo koje je zaduženo za digitalizaciju. To je sad zadnjih dakle nekih godinu i pol još uvijek dakle potrebno napraviti određene ja bih rekao iskorake da se ta defragmentiranost koja je postojala do sad na neki način izbriše i da doista imamo jedno centralno mjesto koje će proces digitalizacije provoditi s jednog mjesta. Ja bih se samo nadovezao, ovdje je bilo puno riječi o umjetnoj zapravo inteligenciji, to je isto jedan od izazova koje kada govorimo o ministarstvu, kada govorimo o Vladi pred nama. Ono što je naš stav unutar ministarstva, ali mislim da mogu reći isto tako naravno i Vlade, po pitanju regulacije. Dakle, mi imamo akt umjetne inteligenciji koji je usvojen na razini Europske unije, koji moramo transponirati u naše zakonodavstvo. Međutim, mislim da pritom moramo biti kao Europska unija, obzirom da smo odgovorna članica Europske unije, itekako, ja bih rekao, oprezni. Vidimo i sada da Europska unija se zapravo hvalila u pogledu recimo GDPR uredbe da smo prvi u svijetu koji smo regulirali područje dakle zaštite osobnih podataka. U zadnje vrijeme imamo velike najave oko relaksacije upravo te uredbe. Prema tome ne bi se čudio da u dogledno vrijeme kada govorimo o reguliranju i umjetne inteligencije isto tako dođe do određene regulacije. Prije svega ako gledamo i naše globalne konkurente, dakle iz pozicije Europske unije govorim, ili SAD ili Kinu, dakle koje taj dio i tu regulativu ima puno fleksibilnije nego što to ima Europska unija. Druga stvar koja će isto biti ključna, to je pitanje zapravo formalno pravni okvir ili formalno pravno zapravo donošenje pozitivnih propisa, pogotovo ako gledamo složen proces od kada on izađe iz Europske komisije, kada bude usuglašen uz parlament i vijeće, pa dok se ne transponira i ne izglasa u nacionalno zakonodavstvo prođe 4-5 godina. Pitanje je u tom vremenskom periodu da li materija, pogotovo kada govorimo o tehnologijama, umjetne inteligencije ili nešto što nas čeka uskoro, koliko je zapravo ono što ste željeli u početku regulirati više s tim protekom vremena uopće je predmet tog normativnog okvira i koliko je u korak s vremenom. To su neki izazovi koji definitivno jesu pred nama. Kada govorimo o Republici Hrvatskoj onda trebamo biti svjesni i njene veličine i važnosti unutar Europske unije u smislu umjetne inteligencije, da se moramo nafokusirati na one segmente društva u kojima možemo ostvariti neku stratešku prednost. Svi znamo da umjetna inteligencija bez kvalitetnih i točnih podataka zapravo nema nikakvog smisla. Prema tome, ja mislim da jedan od segmenata, jedan od sektora u kojima Hrvatska može itekako biti prepoznata je zdravstvo, obzirom na podatke koji su, ako govorimo o tom segmentu, itekako posloženi i gdje smo zapravo došli vrlo daleko. Drugi segment sigurno javna uprava, ali treći segment je i pravosuđe. Kada govorimo o umjetnoj inteligenciji i sustavu korištenja umjetne inteligencije, već sad imamo određene zapravo sustave koji jesu u upotrebi od portala Anon ili u pomoć virtualnog asistenta prilikom vađenja ZK izvadaka ili od određenih projekata poput Predictable Justice gdje zapravo planiramo uz pomoć sustava umjetne inteligencije s jedne strane olakšati pravosudnim dužnosnicima u njihovom poslu, pogotovo onim predmetima koji imaju velik broj dakle, stranica, napraviti jedan sažetak, olakšati im posao, ali s druge strane isto alat koji bi koristio građankama i građanima koji se odlučuju ili razmišljaju ući u određeni spor na temelju činjenica koje su im poznati i dobiti zapravo rezultat i odgovor koliko bi potencijalno na temelju case studija uopće bio potrebno ili uspjeh potencijalno na sudu. Na taj način zapravo smanjiti priljev predmeta na same sudove. Prema tome, umjetna inteligencija mora biti alat, u fokusu mora ostati čovjek i mislim da te alate moramo koristiti i novu tehnologiju upravo u smislu da ubrzamo i postane što učinkovitija i javna uprava, pravosuđe u cjelini cjelokupnog gospodarstva. I zato ono što sam uvodno rekao itekako je bitna suradnja s privatnim sektorom i s akademskom zajednicom, jer u konačnici ti inputi na neki način moraju doći, ako mogu tako reći, s terena. Na ministarstvu je zapravo stvaranje tog normativnog okvira, ali stvaranje normativnog okvira bez uputa, ako mogu tako reći, inicijative s terena, teško da može zapravo rezultirati nekim dobrim outcomeom, odnosno dobrim rezultatom.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for that very full answer. Just very quick to follow up, to ask, so you talked about digitizing all processes by 2030. I assume you mean government services by that. So I just to get some idea of the kind of timeline of where you are now. I mean, has the government done a kind of audit of how many government services at the moment have been digitized, and you have a kind of clear then timeline and path to do the rest by this deadline?
Naravno da je to izazovno, ali ako usporedimo, ako pogledamo rezultate i kompariramo podatke s drugim zemljama članicama Europske unije ili po pitanju digitalnih vještina ili po pitanju osposobljenosti ili digitalne osposobljenosti i naših službenika, onda smo zapravo po tim postocima i po tim rezultatima zapravo iznad prosjeka Europske unije, što nas itekako čini zadovoljnim. Ono što je ključno je kada govorimo o obrazovanju, prije svega obrazovanju državnih službenika i namještenika po tom pitanju isto tako i našim nacionalnim planom, ako govorimo i za razvoj umjetne inteligencije, svakako imamo zasebno poglavlje, ako mogu tako reći. Ono što je ključno je zapravo ta međuresorna suradnja koju sam i na početku spomenuo, dakle Ministarstvo pravosuđa, uprave i digitalne transformacije je zapravo ta centralna točka koja na neki način mora kapilarno tu svijest o potrebi i stjecanja digitalnih vještina, ali i jačanju interoperabilnosti koji isto tako netko prije spomenuo itekako mora staviti naglasak. Dakle, mi imamo recimo kao država CDU, dakle centralno mjesto dijeljenih usluga koje je možda kada je stvoren bio svojevrsni kamen temeljac digitalne transformacije, dakle takozvani državni oblak koji zapravo jest ključ i bitno da se što više tijela državne uprave zapravo svoje podatke koje ima upravo upućuje na to mjesto i kasnije ono što je cilj da više ne dolazimo do one fraze koja je u Hrvatskoj poznata, a to je dok dođete na šalter dok neko kaže fali jedan papir. Dakle, smisao je ako jednom naš građanin u sustav ili negdje u elektroničkom obliku preda jedan papir, potvrdu, dokument, da drugo tijelo državne uprave u određenom trenutku kada traži neku drugu radnju ponovno taj isti papir njega ne traži. Dakle, ako je jednom stavljeno u sustav, dakle once only, onda nema potrebe da se od građana taj isti papir traži ponovno. Tu nije sad samo pitanje stvaranja ili dobre kvalitetne mreže, stvaranje dakle infrastrukture, tu je na neki način pitanje edukacije, podizanje svijesti i kod drugih, dakle unutar tijela državne uprave, oni koji tamo rade, zašto je to bitno i da bez toga i podizanje te svijesti i te sinergije zapravo ovaj cilj koji smo rekli do 2030. godine nećemo u cijelosti ispuniti.
Thanks very much, Minister, for that. So let's come back to regulatory authority. Just like you to, reflect on anything that you've heard from our business panelists, and just to hear actually a bit more from you about what you think the kind of key issues are and what your priorities are for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of building up on what
And
Adrian.
just to say, sorry, not to interrupt, we've got about less than 10 minutes left. So, and I do want to come back to the other speakers as well. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to be extremely quick. So, for us, the priorities for the next years, I would say, probably the first priority is security and resilience of networks. And when we speak about the regulation, that is an area where I think that we still need a very strict regulation, because connectivity is rather good in EU, as we have heard, it's better actually than in US. But those networks are also interconnected, and I think we should all follow same rules. And think about resilience, but not collecting tons of papers showing that we are good in resilience, but trying to simulate cases and to check whether they are really resilient or not. So another area for us is data and AI and cloud. It is changing the way how networks function. What we knew as the network's elements are now pieces of software running somewhere in the cloud. And we need to adjust the regulation to that, having in mind some horizontal rules like GDPR. I'm also in favor of relaxing it, especially because it now prevents us allowing some very good services for citizens, actually. Mm-hmm. For example, the fight against spam. Because when you are clicking a link to a malicious site or to malicious software, it's a content. You cannot see by just having the secure network that the content of the message is wrong. So you need to check the message itself. But if it's done by an automated system, if it's deleted 7 days after it's being done, if those data are secure, then we are on the safe ground. And then it's how to really enable that this data is secure. So as a regulator, I have to say our competencies are widening every day. So we are also a digital services coordinator. We have to look into interoperability. It's also something that EU introduced in a recent period, interoperability of data, interoperability of cloud services. And there will be more tasks, so we have to stay ready. And in general, we should balance this strict regulation and regulation of emerging technologies, which just cannot be so strict, because it's changing so fast. Our regulatory cycle in EU is almost 10 years. So we had electronic communications code in 2018, 2 or 3 years to transpose it. Now we will change it, but it will be 2027 or 2028. So it's too long. We need to establish regulation based on risks and based on principles. And then we need some changes also in the legal system, because otherwise it will not pass the courts later.
Great, thank you very much indeed for that. So we've only got about 4 minutes left. So that's the challenge of a big panel. That's okay. So I want very short answers now to this question, and really it's the same question I guess I'm going to pose to all of you. David, if you don't mind, I'll come back to you at the end. So the question is, you know, we've heard a lot about how Croatia's, you know, in quite a good position, how AI digitization is just reshaping how countries operate, innovate, grow, and so the question is, how can Croatia position itself as a leader in this transformation? Not in this region and even more ambitiously beyond in wider Europe and globally. So first, Andrea, and you have to keep the answers short, all of you. I'm sorry, I know it's a challenge.
So I think today the biggest challenge is fragmentation. It was discussed already before. So we have 27 digital islands, and we need somehow to make sure that we connect those things together. Registries, agencies, ministries work in silos at this moment. So we do have legacy files, we do have paper, we do have a lot of information that is still there. There's two examples. One is, for example, the medical record. I have an electronic patient record in Cyprus, but 40 years are not in that record. So we need AI to help us extract some data, to update that file and make sure that that is updated and we have the most relevant data. Second, another example is e-prescription. I think Croatia is one of the countries that is in this e-prescription mode, where you can go across other countries and get your medication issued at home. That's not AI, that's interoperability. So my point here is that sometimes you can use AI to do some things, but some things, by just connecting things together that already exist, you can have tangible and much faster results with much less cost and investment and time. So I think this is where Croatia is already doing, and I think that's a great example of how we can accelerate those type of...
Thank you very much. Ivana, I'm going to come back to you in a second. Just Boran and Adrian and Ratko, you've all in different ways kind of said some of this already about how Croatia can, what lessons Croatia can have for others, but just some quick final comments on this question of what role Croatia can play.
I must say, as a representative of this digital industry, I was highly encouraged that the Prime Minister said that one of the 3 key objectives is to continue digitization, which I hope also means supporting Croatian exports in that size, in that sense. And I think it's a great thing to even have the Prime Minister say demographics, energy, and digital.
Okay, great, thanks. Adrian?
Yeah, just shortly. I think, we have to admit that we are now in big transition. There is new technology coming. Is it industrial revolution or not? And I think Croatia has to aim high. We are kind of very satisfied where we are aiming for a mid of Europe. And Europe is behind. And when we are looking for sports teams, we are unsatisfied if we don't get a medal on a world championship in, I don't know, soccer, tennis, or handball, or whatever. So I think, we need to aim high. We need to decide a couple of things we as a small country can go in and try to be well best, because we have capability and everything, but we shouldn't get handcuffs on our hands and blind and then fight with the rest of the world. Unleash the potential with not further regulate, and I think right push in the right segments. We cannot make it all. We are a small country, but a couple of segments I'm very sure that we can unleash and really transform and do well.
Thank you. Ratko, final point?
Yeah, so I think every country wants to be a digital leader, right? I mean, we had these discussions from Norway down to Nigeria in South Africa, like every single one. I didn't have a meeting where the country is saying like we want to be a second or third or whatever, right? So now the difference is not about what. I think that part is visible. I think the biggest differentiator is going to be speed and quality, right? So speed in terms of if we need 10 years to digitally transform something, we should drop it right at the start, right? We should ask questions, can we do that at a half, in 50% or some, I don't know, like different questions around speed. And the thing which is also missing is, I'm using the term quality, but I actually mean the quality of output, right? When we do digital transformation, there are outputs of it. Are we really satisfied with what we got at the end? For 2 reasons. First of all, a lot of things changed in the meantime, and the second one, technology also changed in the meantime. So it's a continuous process, right? So there's like 2 things that I would look at.
Great, thank you. Ivana, now coming back to you, because you obviously were emphasizing very much the human dimension in all of this. I just want to ask you, because I'm sure your intention was to be anyway balanced in what you were saying, but it's good to have that emphasis on the human dimension in this discussion. So in what way will this whole tech, digital revolution, AI enhance your ability of your of humans in working in your sector to deliver for consumers, because presumably the roles will change.
Yes. Tech has two major impacts on the Croatian Post. First, with respect to the processes, in-house processes, but the very important one is to the consumer's experience with our service. So if you enable a consumer to do everything via, for example, internet, to track its parcel, to get additional information about date, time, and so on and so forth, the more the consumer will be happy. But one thing I wanted to say in the context of government digitalization, what we are working on, and I think it's very important, we have more than 1,000 postal offices throughout the country, and we will, in the cooperation, of course, with the government, enable that those offices can deliver documents which otherwise the people would have to go to the major cities. Mm-hmm. We will enable our post offices to deliver those public services at home. So.
Excellent, thank you. Finally, yeah, just coming back to, I guess, the kind of consultant perspective, and you had this broader perspective at the beginning, David. Just, you've heard all this, you know, any final reflection from you, just very, very briefly about, are you encouraged yeah, by what you've heard here about Croatia and its ability to actually lead the way in some respects in the region and the wider region?
Yes, definitely, I am. And if you ask for advice, what would be the next step? I would simply say, become the new Estland. Like everyone is just, when you ask how do we digitize public service, everyone is saying, look for Estland. Which rightfully so, they are doing a good job. But become the next Estland. Like set the goals high and make everyone talk about you and set the new examples. You'll reach that goal much earlier than Germany, trust me.
Okay. Well, please join me in thanking all our panel. It was a big panel. I think they did a fantastic job actually in covering all the ground in a short space of time. So yeah, thanks very much. I don't know if we'll get everybody in the photo, but we'll